Amazing. Well, welcome everyone to our workshop with Daniel. I'd love to introduce what Work and Climate is and what we do and myself, and then I'll hand it over to Chi. So Work and Climate is an action-oriented climate community, and we're focused on enabling people to work on climate problems. The goal of our events, and in particular this one, is to provide you with the tools and resources to help you make the transition to work on climate problems, be it at work or outside of work. So hi, I'm Fadi. I'm one of the organizers here at Work and Climate, and I'm currently a product manager at Clearco, which is a fintech company in Canada. And I'm calling in from Canada. So I'll hand it over to Chi.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm also one of the organizers here at Work on Climate. I'm currently pursuing my degree in environmental science at the University of Arizona. And yeah, welcome everyone. I see some familiar faces, so welcome back.
And I'd love for Daniel to go next.
Great. Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I want to thank Fadi and Chi for the opportunity to invite me to speak at this workshop and share my journey. I'm really excited to share it with you and get your feedback, as we're all in this together. So we're all learning together. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, Daniel, I know we had a workshop prepared today, so you can take the floor and go about it how you planned.
Sounds great. Then I'll just get started. I will share my screen. I have some slides that are going to help us with the flow. And then just to be clear, Fadi, if I understand correctly, I'm going to do a quick presentation, 30-40 minutes, some interaction, and then we're going to have Q&A, and then we're going to have a community circle, correct?
Exactly, correct.
Yep. So if you have questions throughout, send them in the chat, and we'll capture them. And also, we discussed that if there is additional interest, we can continue the conversation in the Slack group. So in case you didn't get your question in, or if you're watching the recording of this, we can continue the conversation in the Slack group as a community.
Exactly. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so let me share my screen and let's get started. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So again, thank you so much for being here and welcome to this workshop. The goal of the workshop here is, let me roll those windows here, is to provide actionable and practical advice to kickstart your climate journey with volunteering, mentoring, coaching, and consulting. We've heard a lot of interest in these areas where people want to get more involved, particularly product people or people that want to get into product. So how do you use those skills to get involved in helping climate change? So we're going to talk about a few techniques that I've used in the past throughout this journey. A little bit about myself, just a way of introduction. My name is Daniel Elizalde. Today, I'm a product innovation coach, and I focus on B2B enterprise companies and climate tech. I'm also a mentor of climate tech accelerators, Greentown Labs and Third Derivative, which are two of the biggest ones in the US, and I can talk more about those later in the Q&A. I'm an instructor at Stanford University. I teach product management and product strategy for Internet of Things. My book is coming out in a couple of months about the B2B innovation journey. Some of my professional experience, I was head of products at a company called STEM, which is AI-powered energy storage in Silicon Valley. Also former VP, head of IoT at Ericsson. So I've been around in this industry for a long time. For me, climate is very personal because I grew up in Mexico City, which is one of the most polluted cities in the world. And I've always wondered, how can I get involved? So throughout my career, I've had jobs in many industries, including renewable energy and clean tech. And today I decided that I want to focus my efforts as an independent coach and advisor to help climate tech companies. So let me tell you what that looks like. And again, if there are any questions, please let me know through the chat and we'll answer them later. So unless you want me to pause at any moment, Fadi, just let me know. I'll just continue with the presentation, okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Cool. Okay. Let's see. So the agenda for today, I broke down this in 3 sections, mini sections, really. I want to talk a little bit about the opportunity for product managers in climate tech, which I think it's huge, and that's why we're all here. I also want to talk about how do you kickstart your journey? How do you get started with volunteering? And I have 4 steps here that I will go through, giving you actionable advice, because my goal is for you to take what you learn here and apply it today, and hopefully you can start getting involved today. And then at the end, I have some next steps, including a challenge of getting you started right away. So let's get started. Let me get some coffee to fuel up. Okay, so let's get started with the opportunity. So you've probably seen that climate tech is gaining a lot of recognition throughout. You see it in the regular media. Everybody seems to be talking about it. It's top of mind. And with that, a lot of companies are taking action, whether they have goals to get to net zero, or they are startups or corporations with innovations to attack climate. The space is booming. The funding, the VC funding for innovation in this space is the biggest it has been in its history. We keep breaking records on 2020 and 2021, and 2022 seems to be, they're going to be breaking those as well. So there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of money. And what I've experienced in my journey is that a lot of the companies that are entering the space, they usually lack product expertise. So that's because they're either a very traditional company that has done things one way, and now they're trying to get into this space, but they don't have the chops to do it in a more agile or lean way. Or they're startups that are coming from subject matter experts. And because they have that expertise, they don't have the expertise on how to actually build digital products. In a lot of the companies that I advise, I work directly with the executives, and they either don't have product expertise or don't have product people in the organization, or they have product people that have been promoted from subject matter expert. So there is a lack of product expertise. And this is where the industry can use your help. If you have product expertise or are interested in gaining that expertise, there's a lot of opportunity for you to apply it in multiple ways. So I'm going to talk about different ways on how we can do that. So when we get to the 4 steps of what I recommend here, I'm going to start with, taking a step back, and step 1 is defining your goal. Here, the question for you is, why do you want to get involved in climate tech? And the reason I say this, of course, we're all here because we're concerned about the climate change implications, and we all want to help fight this battle. But what I'm asking here is, you need to take a step further and look deeper. What's in it for you personally? What do you want to get out of that? And the more you are clear about what you want to get out of volunteering or coaching or consulting, the easier it will be to go through the next steps and find the people to do it and be able to get in, right? So the first step is defining why you want to do it. And so what I want to do is take a pause here, and I want to ask you to enter in the chat, why do you want to get into volunteering or coaching or consulting for climate? Just enter it here. I just want to get a sense of what you're thinking here. Okay. Okay. So I see some people that they purpose, okay. Inspiration and fulfillment. Okay. Maximizing impact, giving back to society, making a meaningful difference. Okay, very good. Impact. What does it mean to have impact? solve wicked problems, Harsha. That's awesome. Increase awareness. Okay. So a lot of it is because we want to make an impact. Now, when you are thinking about it, I love this one from Jay. I'm also tired of chasing revenue for revenue's sake, right? Yes, we wanna do something that fills our purpose, and that's true. The interesting thing that with the opportunity for climate is that we can actually ride this next wave of success and growth, doing something that has great impact for the world. So this is great. Now, the reason I say this, and if you are having trouble coming up with an answer, think about if you were to get involved, is it just for learning about the space? Is it because you want to get a job in this area? Because you want to be maybe move into a consulting position, right? So think about those things beyond just the impact, because that's going to help you decide, do you go this path, or who do you talk to, etc. Cool. Okay. I like to solve problems. Why not work on the biggest problems of our era? Great. Exactly. Very good. So thank you for entering your answers there. So let's talk about, based on what your goal is, you can choose different paths. And so what I wanted to do here in this slide is to share a very unscientific definition of, what are the multiple options? And I selected here volunteering, mentoring, coaching, and consulting. And I have an asterisk here because these are my definitions, and it's based on my experience working in the field. If you go to the International Association of Professional Coaches, they might, have a different opinion here, right? We're not talking about the method of delivery. We're talking more about, large strokes. What does it mean to do this one? So in this table here, let's start with volunteering. If you decide that you want to volunteer, usually the structure is going to be ad hoc, meaning when there's something to do, they might call you, and then you might not do anything for a while, and you have to always be chasing, how can you help, right? Volunteering is usually not paid. So if you want to get into making this a way of earning a living, volunteering is a door, but in itself, you won't get paid. And the deliverables just vary between, what the opportunity is, right? Then mentoring, I put it here, it's also ad hoc. And really mentoring is when you're working directly with a company and they have challenges and then they're asking for your advice. And so usually it's driven by the company, and they call you whenever they need anything, and they might ask for your experience. And it's usually a volunteer position, right? So for example, I'm a mentor at Greentown Labs, and that's a non-paid position, right? So just keep that in mind. And your deliverable is just to give advice, to give your experience. When you think about coaching, coaching is more structured, and then you start getting into the paid sections, right? So when you engage with a company or with a person on a coaching relationship, it means that you have some structure. You're going to be meeting every week for so long. You have an agenda of things that you want to solve. It has the possibility of not only giving advice, but also training. And again, it's paid, right? So this is another bracket. And then consulting is also paid, but it's based on SOWs. And the deliverable is based on what you agree with the company. One of the big differences with consulting is that consulting means you're going to do the work. All the other ones, well, specifically mentoring and coaching, means you're going to give them advice and the company is going to be doing the work. In consulting, you're expected to do the work and deliver the results, whatever it is. If you're asked to do research, well, your research report or your roadmap or whatever. One thing for PMs that I found, it's actually really hard to get into a consulting role in PM, because usually companies don't want to outsource the actual doing of product to a third party. And so usually what you will find is that those positions are like short and just to help a little gap, or what they're more interested in is more of a coaching so that you can train their team to do the work, right? So just keep that in mind. If you're thinking for consulting as a PM, doing PM work for a company, those are very rare, very, very rare, and usually are taken by the McKinseys and the Accentures of the world. So something to think in mind. Okay, I'm going to move on. Now, Now that we talked about what your goal is and some variations of how you can approach it, what I want to do in the next steps is to have a product mindset. We're all here interested in product, we're product managers or in the product folks. So if you think about the goal of a product, the goal of a product is to solve a problem for your customer. So in this case, think of yourself as the product. And so you need to solve a problem for your customer. And if you take that mindset, then the first thing you need to do with any product is define your target market. So who do you want to help? And this is one caveat that I always see in people that are new in this space, that they just want to help, but who and how, right? I was coaching one of my teammates, one of the directors in my team, and he said, my goal is to coach startups. It's like, startups don't need coaching. People needs coaching. And who within that startup do you want to coach and how, right? So think about that. Take a step back and say, who do you want to help? So I'm going to give you a tool here that I use to define target markets. When you're thinking about who do you want to help, let's break down what target market means. And to me, it means that you have to define this 5-6 components, right? What industry do you want to be involved in? What vertical within that industry? The company size that you want to work in, the geography, the function within the company that you want to get involved with, and then the use case that you want to get involved in. The more you can define these things, the better chances you will have to find people that you can talk to, that they can open the door for you to do some coaching. So this is very important. And this is particularly important in climate, because climate is just a big umbrella of things that are affecting climate change. There are a lot of industries and a lot of verticals and a lot of solutions and a lot of technologies. So if you just say, I want to work in climate, it's kind of hard to figure out what does that look like. So let me show you an example of what this could look like if you fill it out. I'll take a sip of coffee here. So here's an example. Let's say that I want to be a coach and the industry that I select is the energy industry, okay? Well, the energy industry is huge. Are you talking about generation, distribution, transmission? Are you talking about the supply chain of energy? There's so many things, right? So you can say, okay, the vertical of energy that I'm interested in is energy storage. Okay, great. So energy storage. What company size would you care about working with? Could be a big company, could be government. Let's say it's a startup. Okay, so startups in energy storage. The geography, I think, is very important. So let's say in this example, I'm saying startups in energy storage in the United States. And that's very important because it helps you narrow your search of who you want to talk to. And also within climate, because it's so affected by the geographic context and the regulation of a particular country and region, you know, the more you know about the place that you want to do this, the better. I coach some companies that work with energy providers in Nigeria because the founder is from Nigeria and they understand those problems really, really well. Right? So it's important to understand that geography. Then the next one is, who within the company are you looking to help? In this case, I'm saying the CPO, the Chief Product Officer. Okay, and I'll go into that for a second. And then what use case? So yes, we talked about energy storage, but what about energy storage? Is it resiliency? Is it grid services? Is it backup power? Is it EV chargers, right? So there's also a big thing, right? So the use case that I decided here in this example is electric vehicles and charging stations supported with batteries for demand charge reduction. Great. Right? So with this approach, I know exactly now who I need to talk to and start understanding their pains so that I can present myself as a knowledgeable consultant or coach says, hey, if I know this particular space, I can help you, right? And I'll tell you more about some of the common things that companies are looking for in a second. But before I go there, I want to talk about that asterisk here that I have with the function of the company. It's a lot easier to get started coaching your peers or less experienced people than you. I talk to some people that are, for example, senior product managers, and they say, I want to coach startup CEOs. it's not very likely that a startup CEO will actually open up the door and in their calendar to be coached by a senior PM, right? So this is very important because it goes to your time and your credibility. So if you are a C-level person or an executive that has the right experience, yes, you can aim to talk to CPOs, but maybe you need to talk to directors, or maybe you need to talk to entry-level product managers, or maybe you are an experienced engineer and you want to help engineers to transition to product or something like that, right? It's very, very important because your messaging is going to go towards these people. What a CPO needs is very different than what a director needs of what a entry-level product manager needs. And so if you want to coach them, you want to make sure that you have the right message and the right expertise, right? So for me, I can run the gamut, right? I have the experience and I work with a lot of C-level people and below, but because I have that expertise already. But this is a big pitfall that I see very, very often. So just when you're defining your target market, make sure you think that. Okay, so let's talk about, once you define your target market, I'm going to give you a generalization of challenges that I've seen a lot of companies in climate have, that you can see where your expertise lies. So let's talk about that. Oh, sorry, I'll jump ahead. I'll do that in a second, but I want to give you some resources for understanding the market. So when I said you need to understand the industry and the vertical, if you're new to climate, and even if you've been in it a while, it is so big. I want to point you to these 3 books. These are my favorite books on the topic. The Bill Gates book, Drawdown, and then Speed and Scale. They are really deep dives into all the solutions that exist out there that technology can help with to solve climate change. And by reading these books, you will get an understanding of, oh, so, okay, so the problem is this, these industries are doing this, these companies are doing this, these are the use cases of these companies. Oh, now I can go to LinkedIn and see who works in those companies. So if you're new at this, this is a great place to start. Now, another great place to start is Work on Climate's library of resources. Fadi and she have put together a lot of great resources for PMs, and the community as a whole has a ton of resources. So Fadi and she can follow up with us on the chat on more links. But if you're new and you're just getting started, I recommend these books so that you can be conversant, because that's the other thing, right? When you're wanting to coach somebody in climate, you have to be fluent in climate. I disagree with that opinion that PMs don't need any domain knowledge. We can just jump from company to company and we can learn. Yeah, you can if you're an employee, but if you're coming in as a coach or you want to volunteer, you want to provide value, you need to know the space, you need to know the lingo, you need to know the terminology, you need to know the technology stack, you need to understand what are the pains of those customers, right? What are the pains of people transitioning out of natural gas into solar? What are the challenges of installing solar in a commercial thing, right? So these books will give you a start, and then you can start your journey of learning a lot more, right? So become fluent in climate tech so that then you can add value with your product skills. And it takes a while, don't worry, it's a journey for all of us. So let's move on. So now we know our goal and we know our target market. So the next step is to define how we can help, right? And here, if we think about that product mindset, we're talking again about what is our value proposition? What is your value proposition to these companies that you have outlined in your target market? So let's talk about that for a second. One of the mistakes that I've seen when people are starting with this approach is they say, well, I want to be a coach in product management. But product management is huge, right? What about product management? So just like you narrow down your focus with your target market, you also have to narrow down your area of expertise. And this is when you define your target market and you start talking to those folks, then you can understand your target audience needs and then your expertise, and wherever that meets, that can be your value proposition. To give you an example, I can be an expert in a specific area of hardware development, But if my target audience is a pure software play and they care about SaaS, they couldn't care less about that. So you can't really force it, right? So you have to understand the needs of your target and figure out how you can help them and join them, right? So for example, if you are targeting SaaS companies in doing climate analytics, well, then you can say, well, they might care about pricing, or they might care about prioritization, or they might care about road mapping, or they might care about team hiring. And so what areas can you help them so that then you can meet them where they are, right? It's just the same as with any product. The product has to meet the needs of the customer, not just have a bunch of features and throw and see what sticks, okay? So again, this whole approach is trying to narrow your scope so that when you talk to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, this person can help us, right? So it takes time to figure this out because you have to understand the market and talk to people to say, hey, how can I help you? But when you do that, it's very powerful. So let me move on and let me tell you a little bit about some potential value proposition areas that I've encountered in working with hundreds of companies. I found that the needs of climate tech companies usually fall in these three areas. Either they need vertical expertise, they need technology expertise, or they need process expertise. So let me talk about each one of them. The vertical expertise means if you're a subject matter expert in a particular domain, they want to learn from you. So this is why I say here, been there, done that, can share where the line mines are. So for example, I was head of products at a energy storage company. And I get to talk to a lot of people that are in energy storage or in building automation or in building efficiency. They want to say, hey, you know, we're deploying these big systems in commercial buildings. How did you deal with this permitting? How did you define your roadmap to meet this? We have these challenges with pricing, right? So I know where the line mines are and I can share my expertise in that area, right? Another area of vertical expertise that I've seen is partnerships and ecosystems. The reality with climate tech is the majority of it is B2B. So companies are buying these solutions, less of consumers. And so therefore, in B2B, partnerships are very important and navigating the ecosystem is very important. Meaning, where does your solution fit within the end-to-end solution for the customer? For example, you might be deploying energy storage solutions for smart buildings, but you might make just the batteries and you need to integrate the controller from somebody else and you need the cloud from somebody else. And so companies that are new in the space, they might say, hey, I have this battery, but I don't know how to do a controller, or I don't know where to buy this, or I don't know which are the right solar companies to partner for a solar and storage solution, right? And so if you have that vertical expertise, you can guide them, right? So that's a big area, but as you can imagine, that requires a lot of expertise in the domain. Other areas that are more approachable for if you're new to the space, technology expertise, I think that's very important. But notice that I say focus on the business side. It's not on the technology itself. Their engineering teams can take care of that. So for example, if you're familiar with managing APIs or cloud or edge or SaaS or IoT, they usually need that expertise. I was telling Fadi and Chi the other day, an example. I was coaching a company doing a marketplace for carbon capture credits, selling and buying. And they're an API first SaaS player. And they were struggling with developing the roadmap and the positioning of an API first approach. I happen to have experience with API first approaches in the past, so I was able to help them understand, if you're doing API first, this is what it means for your roadmap. This is what it means for your team. This is what it means for your partnerships. This is what it means for your pricing, right? Same with IoT. IoT is one of my areas of expertise. And so when companies come to me and say, hey, we're doing this connected, I don't know, solar installations that are smart or predictive maintenance for wind turbines. Okay, well, I'm very familiar with how the whole IoT stack works. Let me tell you from a product perspective, here's what you need to be thinking about. So if you have technology expertise and you're managing products today, you have a lot to offer. You just have to find who needs that expertise. And the last area that I usually coach on is process, PM process, right? Like I said, a lot of these companies are new to the product discipline. So they need help with prioritization, with road mapping, discovery, building a team, those kind of things. And so if you are an expert or you have good expertise on discovery, right? You know the techniques for interviewing users and how to create personas. That's incredibly valuable for these companies because they're trying to figure out their market fit. They're trying to figure out their customer base. So you can offer, it's like, hey, I can coach you, I can train you on how to do this discovery or how to do this or that, right? So the point of this list is to give you some ideas on multiple areas that you can think about. Where does your expertise lie? And these companies, at the end of the day, whether they're climate or not, they are technology companies trying to sell B2B products to market. And so they have the same pains. So if you can help filling the gaps to whatever their team doesn't have today, you can add a ton of value. Now, the more you know about climate and the climate specific challenges of the market, the more valuable you'll be because you'll be speaking the same language from day one. So I hope this list helps a little bit and gives you some ideas of where you can go. So if that's helpful, just put in the chat like this makes sense or no, you're crazy, Daniel, which we knew already, but okay. Very good. So I'm going to move first because we have not a lot of time left. Step 4, connecting with your prospects. So we talked about understanding your market and where you can add value. So how do you start connecting with all these folks? And for this, I'm going to take 2 minutes to do another question. Let's turn it around and say you are a director of product at a climate company and you need some help. How do you know that you want to work with a particular coach? Put it in the chat. Let's just take 1 minute to do this. Let's put it around. How would you know that this person has the expertise that you need or that you want to work with them? Good credentials, referrals. What else? Prior experience with the same tech, past experience, right? Yeah, the usual, right? So the question that now I turn the question to you. Why would these companies look at you for provide this coaching, right? And this is where, if we keep on with the analogy of a product mindset, this is where you start getting into your marketing and sales, right? You need to build that credibility and attract prospects. So somebody mentioned in the chat, you need to gather reviews and testimonials, like in your LinkedIn profile, that you are a good coach or that you are that you know the space, right? If you're getting started, that might be difficult. My advice that what I really advocate is to create content, articles, podcasts, talks, webinars. Put your knowledge out there so that people can say, oh, this person really knows what they're talking about. It helps you articulate your point of view and your value proposition. This is what I know, and this is how I can help you. People will be attracted to that. And it also supports your expertise. When you're talking to somebody and says, hey, I'm interested in some help about prioritization, you can say, oh, I wrote an article about that. Here's what my approach would be. And then you can say, you want me to help you with that, right? So that's how having this content is super important, right? It supports your expertise and opens doors. Examples of contents I have, I know this is an eyesore, but here are some articles. For example, Diane Kosian has been really successful in creating this climate tech maps. And so now if I think about who can help me understand this segment of the industry, I'm going to call Diane, right? Or my friend Sylvia wrote this great article for climate risk analytic trends, which is a fantastic article. I learned a lot. So next time I need to know about climate risk analytics, I'm just going to call her. And then the other 3 are things that I've written, right? So how IoT can help fight climate change. Doesn't have to be climate sometimes, right? Like this one, the business of APIs. This is the article that I gave my mentees in that carbon company and say, hey, here's what you need to be looking at. If you want to discuss more, I'm happy to help. I also have a podcast. So that's another avenue, right? Here I have conversations with leaders in climate tech, like the CTO of STEM, talking about the IoT and the energy revolution. So what this does is gives me credibility, and people think like, oh, I like his approach. I'm going to give him a call, or if I give somebody a call, they might have heard of me, right? So building this repertoire of value that you're putting out there is going to go a long way. Now, how do you connect with people? Well, first you have to find out where those people hang out. Conferences, forums, websites. The more narrow you've targeted your market, the easier it will be. And you can always reach out directly through LinkedIn. You can build a relationship and talk to them. And when the time is right, and say, hey, I can help you with this. Here's some of my articles, or I can volunteer with you, or I can coach for you, or do you have a job or something, right? So this is all about building those relationships little by little. Another big opportunity is to volunteer organizations. So for example, Work on Climate, it's a great example, right? We all here know Chi and Fatty. If I need something about climate and working in climate, the first people that are kind of coming to my mind are Chi and Fatty, because they are the ones that have the spotlight in the community. So volunteering at communities, being present, opens a lot of doors, helps you network, helps you connect. Other organizations, you can volunteer at incubators or accelerators so that you can actually start coaching directly, right? And it's a little bit harder to get into those, but if you have the credentials, then you can go to them and apply to be a mentor. And then now they open the door to their network, and you get that credibility and visibility. Right? So there are many ways, but the key thing is to build relationships with people that you're interested in helping and that you have the skills that they need. Okay, so next steps, just to wrap up. My main advice is get started today, right? Don't think about it too much. This is a journey. It takes time. So what I would challenge you to do this week, today's Wednesday, yeah, this week, is define your goal, write it down, define your target market using the 6 bullets that I presented here, and define your value proposition. How can you help these companies? If you do that, you'll get a lot of clarity. And then, you can share it with the Slack group, right? Let's all see what we're all working on. And then the second part of the challenge is within the next 2 weeks, put together a list of 30 people in that target market. Like, can you think of them right now? Maybe not, right? Because you want to have a pool of people like, oh, I would love to volunteer with all these people. Let's make a list. Do I know them? No. Who knows them? And maybe start making those connections. Also, write a list of 10 content ideas that you would write to demonstrate your expertise. Do you know about prioritization? Write 10 potential topics, and then write one article or podcast or video, whatever is the medium you want, and connect with your first prospect. So what I'm asking is, this week, define the goals, target market, and value prop. And within 2 weeks, you should be able to start having those conversations with people that might be interested. They might not want your coaching right away, but at least you're having those conversations, you're learning, and then you will develop that relationship to be able to get involved. So that's my challenge to you. And with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and let's stay in touch. My website is just my name. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, through the Slack group. And then on my website, I have a lot of articles and podcasts and resources. So feel free to visit those. And that's it. I'll give it back to Fari and Chi. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Daniel. This was super helpful. I'm sure many of us found this very insightful because I could see from the chat. So what's going to happen next is we're going to go through some questions that were submitted from the forum and through the chat. And we'll be calling out people to, if they submitted the chat, we'll be asking them to unmute and ask the question. But for those in the forum, who are present, I don't think you'll remember your question that you submitted. So you can just unmute, and if you have follow-up, you can just follow up. But one question that came from, I'm sure I'm butchering the name, Kirthana, they're asking, how can founders create an environment that best supports their PMs? I'm guessing they're referring to how can they create an environment for their PMs to help their company be more action oriented towards climate within the company or outside.
I see. So is the question, is this a company that is a climate company or just any company?
We're a climate tech company.
Okay. Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you for your question. What I think is, what I've seen a lot, especially in smaller companies, they're still founder driven, and the founder will call the shots and say, this is what we're doing and this is the product, et cetera. Right? So I think that the idea of creating a more robust product culture is to really have product managers and product people that can receive from leadership what is the desired outcome, and then you can work with your teams to actually provide solutions for that outcome, right? So I think it's building that shared understanding on what is the value of the product team, which is to solve these problems and based on what the customers want. And then if you're able to convince, and this is a big if, right, your founder, your CEOs, that the company needs to work like that, then opportunities will start opening, and then the product team can start delivering their value. It's not easy because a lot of founders, especially in early startups, might dictate what gets built, and that's why a lot of startups fail. But it's having that conversation of, this is the value of product, these are the processes and tools that we can bring to the table. Our goal is to de-risk your initiative, right? Because that's what they care about, is to be successful, right? So if you can offer to de-risk that initiative, you might get some attention. I hope that helps a little bit.
Oh yes, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Kirtana. So I have one more. I'm going to ask one more question from the submission form, because there's a lot of really good questions there. There is a question from Jay. I think he's here. Let me just double check. Jay, yes, Jay Talat.
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Yes,
Oh,
you asked
question,
in the form. Yes, I figured. So you asked, what's the best advice for making the switch between IoT PM to climate? And I know, Daniel, you also come from an IoT background, so I thought I'd get your thoughts on that.
Yes, that's my wheelhouse. So awesome, Jay. Thank you for your question. The beauty of it is that IoT is a foundational technology to support climate. So the only thing you need really is to understand, by looking at those books that I mentioned, is which ones of those solutions are IoT solutions, and then get familiar with the challenges of that industry. So for example, solar installations in rooftops. Well, those, yes, they're climate, but they're IoT, right? The controllers are smart controllers, and they have the tracking and the monitoring and all those things, right? And so it's just about understanding which of those solutions are IoT, which are like 60, 70%. And then what is the problem they're trying to solve? And then you start merging the two, right? That's why you have to be, if you're versed in IoT already, you have 80% of the way there. Now you need to bring in the, what is the pain of my customers? The pain is not IoT, right? Their pain might be to reduce their energy bill, to increase resiliency, to those kind of things, and then just put those two together, right? If you can articulate that value prop, you're there. The hardest, you have already the hardest part if you're already an IoT PM.
Thanks, Daniel.
I would, yeah.
Works.
And when I actually, sorry, if I may add, when I talk to incubators and accelerators, a lot of the appeal that they see in my expertise is that I am an IoT PM. It's like, you know the stack, you know where the line mines are, and you know climate. Can you help us, right? So I think you're there.
Amazing. Yeah. So Harsha has been, the chat has been blowing up throughout the workshop, but I know Harsha has submitted a few questions. I'd love for them to kind of like unmute and ask one of the questions they think is just, they want to ask for this Q&A.
Yes. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, my friend. How are you?
Oh, hello again. So I'm, as you, let me start off by saying I've been associated with you for quite some time, and one of the beneficiaries of your coaching, thinking, instruction. So, but specifically to climate, I want to get your thought process. This is a big, unsurmountable problem, right? So how do you think about products and solutions for a really wicked, big, unsurmountable problems? what does a thing like a minimum viable product even look like, I mean, as compared to, let's say, an IoT or so where I'm going with this is what are the different thought processes that go about that someone like you thinks about in going about products and solutions? What is different about this? What is different about this market segment? Because I'm very unclear. Is a market segment us, or is it the ecosystem environment? I don't know. So and then I asked this very specific question. So if we want to do innovation here, is there any sense in doing no code, low code, the new buzzwords, right? Getting the proof of concept, the proof of solutions much faster and earlier, and making it scalable. But I really want to hear how Daniel thinks about this wicked problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's good to hear from you. You always throw me the hardest questions, Harsha. That's why I love you. So the way I think about this is that, you know me, right? I try to break a big problem into smaller chunks that are more manageable. So if we think about climate as a whole, yeah, it's unsurmountable, or hopefully not. But then if you think about your target market and you decide, I'm going to take the example of smart buildings, and you start, okay, can I help with smart buildings because they are some of the biggest producers of carbon? Okay. The next thing is, what problem are they trying to solve? I think what's different about climate is that, unfortunately, nobody wants to buy climate solutions. People are either needing to buy them because their company has a mandate, or because they have regulation on top of it, or they're in reality they're trying to just reduce their increase their margins and improve their bottom line, and they're thinking of ways to do it. And so you have to understand that challenge, and then whatever solution you provide needs to both help them with the real pain, right? Maybe it's increasing their operational efficiency while reducing carbon. Right? So big problem, boil it down to what specific target market could pay for, would benefit from, right? And then you start going into the idea of an MVP, right? You and I have talked about this. I don't like the term MVP, particularly in climate, because these solutions are very, very complex. I go more for the topic of my book, which is your first 10 customers. And so start working on figuring out what is that product that you can create that can deliver value to your first 10 customers through pilot programs. And that's how you make a dent, and then you start scaling from there, right? So it's the same process. It's just understanding really the mindset of people buying climate solutions, who's buying it and why are they buying it. It's very different than just pure B2B type of stuff that we're used to, or B2C. So that's the mindset. Big problem, make it smaller, make it tangible, address a specific problem of a specific person that has the byproduct of helping climate. It's not the main reason. Otherwise, you're going to bump into your head with capitalism.
Amazing. Does that answer your question, Harsha?
Yes, it sets us thinking in very different ways, but I'm sure continued interaction with Daniel will help clarify a lot of things. We are all in this together, so and it's a new frontier, so I guess things will just unravel.
One thing that I can also point out is understanding the life cycle of these solutions. Some of them are in the lab, and the work that you can do there is to bring them out of the lab to the first customer. Some of them are fairly mature, they've reached market fit, and it's about scaling them. So that takes a different skill set. So when you're thinking about your skill set, are you a lab to 1 type of PM, 1 to 10, 1 to 100 PM like me? Are you 100 to 1 million PM like others that I know, right? Like Rob Tiffany, which is here with us. That you have to decide. Well, Rob can do the whole gamut, so that's why I like him too. I just put here, somebody's asking about my book, so I just put it in the chat, upcoming book. So if you want to hear more about my ideas about tackling your first 10 customers, I think it's interesting because the whole idea is that a lot of startups die before they can deliver real value. And with climate, we don't have that luxury, right? If we have to minimize the risk and the uncertainty so that more and more and more of these solutions actually succeed, because we need them to succeed. Otherwise, we won't make it ish. Sorry. Next
Yeah,
question.
no, that's amazing.
I get excited about this.
So I think I just went through the chat. Most of the questions that were submitted in the chat were answered later in the workshop. But if there's any more questions that we haven't covered, please feel free to post them in the Slack channel, and we'll try to follow up. And I'm just going through the forum questions as well. I think one last question before we switch to our community circle, which is like another way of just meeting the community and Daniel, is, and I think this is a question that everyone's kind of like asked in different ways. Just on a high level, Connor Russo submitted asking, what is the difference between a climate tech PM and a PM?
Yep, that's a great question. And the way I see it is that a climate tech PM is a PM that specializes in the challenges of climate. But you have to be a very strong PM regardless, right? That's why I feel that this idea that PMs don't need domain expertise is overrated. I think all PMs are retail PMs or manufacturing PMs or healthcare PMs, because we have some sort of level of expertise based on what our background is. And so a climate PM just happens to know the challenges, the ecosystem, the industry, the problems, the solutions of that market, and can talk climate, right? Feel comfortable with that. But at the end of the day, when you're working with your team, you're applying that together with your strong PM skills to de-risk and reduce the uncertainty of launching this very important product to market. So,
does that answer your question, Connor? Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Daniel. Connor, I see him with us on the chat, but maybe he's
Yes, no, I'm here. Yes, thank you. I think it does. I think there's a question of sort of how much domain expertise do I need before I can raise my hand and say, like, I think your problems look like other PM problems I've solved. Mm-hmm. Can I get in there? Like, we have tools, as you know, in design and PM, of like work mapping and digging deep, like doing a research process for a week. And I normally feel like I can get ramped up to a level where I can be helpful if the problems take certain shapes, but I don't know that I'd get hired without the domain expertise up front. So I guess I'm wondering, like, how much education do I need in climate before I can call myself a climate PM versus just a PM?
That's a great question. And what I would say is raise your hand today. Like, we need your expertise today. And then if somebody says on a Friday, I would love to talk to you about the challenges I have, Saturday and Sunday, you read a couple of books, and on Monday you come prepared to say a couple of words, and then you learn like that, right? Don't wait to be ready, because we're never ready, right? Like, so yeah, your expertise is very much needed. You just need to be conversant enough with the challenges that they say, oh yeah, he speaks our language, right? Because from a hiring manager of a PM or a consultant or a coach, what you're thinking, and I've been in those shoes, is how much will I have to train and ramp up this person before they can help me? There's always a ramp up curve. So if you can show that instead of 100% ramp up is 90, okay, it's 50, it's 20, wow, right? But that's a decision that if your PM and your chemistry with this other person are so big, they can overlook that, right? But if there's two people that are equally good PMs and one has read 2 more books than you in climate, probably me as a hiring manager is like, this person knows the lingo, at least I can train them 1 week less, right? So that's how we're thinking as hiring managers. So does that help? We're all learning. Amazing. So yeah, believe me, fake it till you make it is true here.
I've been volunteering at Work and Climate for maybe a little over 8 months, and I'm still learning every week something new. So there's never a dull day. But so this ends our Q&A section. I'm going to stop recording.